let's move on to actually another pretty interesting topic. And I have to thank...
I was at a resort in Mexico. I'm glad you didn't talk about this before I went to that.
I know. This is a crazy story. I want to thank Robert, who actually has been a guest host. He guest hosted for me once whenever I think you were sick or out of town. He may have guest hosted twice. Robert actually sent me this story. So thanks, Rob. I appreciate it, buddy. And so he sent me a video, and he sent this video, and then he sent me a question. And so it basically, let's throw up the title. So basically, this is about a couple that was drugged in a Mexican resort, and it goes on to ask the question of what if you need medical care in a foreign country? Like, what do you do? Like, what if you need it? Like, how do you proceed? So I want to roll the video. So this is from CBS Dallas, I believe. It's a video about this story. We'll talk just briefly about that, and then we'll dive into that second question. So roll it.
Students from Oklahoma back home after they say 2 girls in their group were drugged at a Mexican resort.
It was supposed to be a vacation in paradise for college students Zara Hall and Jake Snyder when they traveled to Cancun with a couple of their friends last Thursday.
We just had a pool day.
But their vacation quickly turned into a nightmare.
We both got water, and within 2 minutes, Jake had turned around and we both hit the bar heads down at the same time, and we were done.
They believe the water was drugged.
I could not lift up my head, anything, and I all of a sudden started having these seizing compulsions.
She was rushed to a private hospital.
Basically, there was just me and Zara in this hospital that had hundreds of rooms.
And all the locks are on the outside, so they can lock you in the room. At this point, they have sedated me so much that I do not know where I am. I have not woken up. I don't know anything. And
the hospital demanded tens of thousands of dollars for her care.
They had increased the amount of money that they wanted. The baseline was $10,000. I mean, they were holding me captive. So.
We're going home, Zara.
30 hours later, they secured a private plane out of Mexico to Dallas, where she's been hospitalized since Saturday.
They were trying to get me off the ventilator, but every time they did it, my lungs would just stop.
But doctors have done multiple tests and haven't found anything wrong. They say they don't know for sure what happened to her, but say it is possible she was drugged. They just hope their story serves as a warning for others.
It's hard because, they say that the resort is the safest place. Don't leave it. That's not true.
That is scary.
Pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't go to Cancun, though.
To get drugged in the resort is,
that's scary.
That's crazy.
Was it her boyfriend didn't get drugged, or he did, but it just
no,
didn't
it was
affect
her
him
and
as
her
much?
other friend.
Oh.
Yeah, it was her. The boyfriend did. It was her and another girl that were there. I think that's pretty wild. So this is I don't know if I ever talked about this. So I actually got drugged in Mexico when I was in college.
No, you never told us.
Haven't I told you that story? So when I was growing up, we used to go to Mexico a lot, me and my friends. And we'd go to the border towns like Matamoros, Nuevo Laredo, or whatever. And so this is 94, I think, 95. So we went down there and we went to a bar. And anyway, so this girl comes up to me and starts talking to me and hanging out. And this was really early in the night. And so my friends were there, thankfully. And so I was hanging out with this person. And then the next thing I know, I woke up and it was the next day. And I was so confused. I woke up and I felt really weird, not hungover, but just not all with it, there.
Foggy.
Yeah, really foggy. And my friends were there, and I was what in the world just happened? Because to me it was almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
And they're you tell us what happened. All of a sudden you couldn't stand up, and we had to leave.
Yeah.
Which some people might say, oh well, he's just drunk. But no, I mean we at that point we were drinking all the time. We could have drunken all night.
And you said it was early.
It was early.
In the night.
It was the very first place that we went. In this we were in in Nuevo Laredo.
Yeah.
And so I think that person drugged me to take my money or something. Who knows? I have no idea. But my friends were there, and as soon as they saw me change, they said we had to take you out of there because you couldn't stand up, or couldn't stay awake.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what I was given, but I mean, I don't know.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's wild, right? So, obviously, thank God I was like with like my friends,
Yeah.
people that like take care of me. But like that was like in like a shady border town, right? I mean, like getting drugged at like a resort or something, that's a completely different.
Yeah. You're pretty much paying for like safety and
right. Like,
stuff.
isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
And then, for the hospital, like, you go into the hospital and they want $10,000 like up front. I mean, that's kind of wild. I mean, you almost wonder if it was like some sort of scam or something, because they took them specifically to a private hospital. Like, was the scam that they, were given the sedative so they could go to the hospital and get charged money?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's creepy.
I personally won't go to Mexico anymore. Like, we used to go to Mexico a lot, especially when I was like college age, go to the border towns. And then my wife and I used to go to like Cancun, Cozumel. Like, I pretty much won't go anymore. I just don't think it's that safe.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess a weird thing to say, because like statistically, I'm not sure it's less safe than other like Caribbean countries that we go to. But you hear so many stories about.
Well, you experienced.
I did. I mean, honestly, I
the
did.
issue that people talk about.
Yeah.
all
Well,
the time.
I mean, kind of my own fault, right? Like, being like in a, like a seedy border town, like not like, necessarily, in Cancun or Cozumel, talking to people. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I was not smart college student, like running around like border towns in Mexico with my friends.
You're just a young.
I just was like young,
invincible.
Right?
That's what your mindset was.
But yeah, last time we went to Mexico was during swine flu.
I think you told me about
yeah,
that.
we
and
did
you got
that.
the tickets really cheap.
Yeah, we got tickets really cheap. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of scary that you could actually get drugged at a resort. Because you're right. Like, when you go to a resort, you feel like, okay, that's a safe place to be. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure it always is. But so anyway, my friend Robert he showed me the story. He's like, so what do you think about like, your thoughts and if you need medical care in a foreign country? That's a great question. I mean, and it's something actually I just recently thought about, because we were thinking about it when we just went to Alaska, because my wife had heard a story of somebody that had some sort of like serious medical issue, and they ended up having to pay like $20,000 or $30,000.
Yeah. Well, one of my friends went on vacation in Europe and they got like a UTI, and they had to go to the doctor and get a prescription. I don't remember how they went about doing it, but I just remember they told me it was like very cumbersome.
Yeah.
It was like very difficult.
I mean, it's a great question, and so
like something as minor as that.
Yeah, I can actually answer these questions for you.
Okay.
Or help you guys. So I think if you're thinking about like going on a trip to a foreign country, which, I mean, this is hard to do. It's like, okay, you got so much that you're trying to plan, like, what am I going to do, and take time off work and, arrange for the house or my pets or whatever. And then you have to think about, what about my health?
Yeah.
But I mean, we're all trying to be adults these days, I think. And so this is a pretty good thing to think about.
What if I get a cold?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the first question I would ask, is, do you trust the medical care in the country you're going to? Mm-hmm. I think that makes a difference, because if, for example, if I'm going to a country, maybe a third world country, I don't really want to get medical care there. I mean, no offense to third world countries, but I mean, I'm cautious about who I will go to the doctor to here in the United States.
Right.
Over there, absolutely not. So if you don't trust the medical care in the country you're going to, which I mean, not to answer that for you, but I would personally be nervous getting significant medical care, like, outside of maybe getting like an antibiotic for UTI, that's probably okay. But like significant medical care, like personally, I would probably only trust places like, Canada, UK, Western Europe, Australia. Like outside of that, I probably would not want to get serious medical care in any place. And if that's the case, then you should get what's called medical evacuation insurance, which medical evacuation insurance is basically it's an insurance policy you buy for a certain period that says if you need to be medically evacuated for a serious medical issue, they will literally send a plane to come get you and bring you back to the United States.
Nice.
And it can actually get it pretty cheap. I looked up different medical evacuation insurance policies. Depending on where you're going and how long you're going to be there, it can be as cheap as like $50.
Nice.
Yeah, and it goes up, of course. Like if you're like say out in the boonies of Africa or in Antarctica, which you can still buy these insurances
it's
no matter
gonna go up.
It's going to go up, right? Or if you're there for a longer period of time. And actually, we actually bought this when we went to Alaska.
Yeah.
It was all like together, like medical evac as well as like insurance if you need something there. No, actually, it was just medical evac because in Alaska, your regular insurance would work.
Yeah.
If you do trust the company, so say you're going on a trip to Canada or, I don't know, France or somewhere where, okay, like they have pretty good medical systems, then you need to know if you're going to be covered. And there are some private insurances that will cover you out of the country.
Okay.
So if you have private insurance, and Medicare does not.
Yeah.
So if you're a senior, you're on Medicare, this does not apply to you because Medicare does not cover in foreign countries. But like if you have a private insurance, you can call your insurance carrier and ask them, am I covered if I need medical care? And then you tell them what country it is, and they can tell you. And if they say yes, then you need to make sure you have your insurance card, and then there's a claim form that you need to take with you that I guess is supplied by your insurance company. If you don't, like if your insurance company doesn't, then you can decide if you want to get not the medical evacuation, but the medical insurance in foreign country. That actually exists as well. And I checked on the price of that. It's about similar to the evac. Mm-hmm. It can be really, really cheap depending on where you're going or what you're doing. Like if you're going mountain climbing in the Himalayas, then that's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
Like the insurance. If you're going to be, in the UK, hanging out in London, probably not so much. I think another question asked, are you going somewhere remote? Like I said, when we were going to Alaska, we bought the evacuation insurance.
Yeah.
Because it is a huge deal. It's not like you're going to be in Paris where there's a hospital, on almost every corner. If you're going to be somewhere remote, and you have to pay out of pocket to get pulled out, it's going to be super expensive. So I think the insurance is worth it. I think another question to ask is how likely are you to get sick or injured? Meaning two things. One, are you like an older person that has chronic illnesses? That could flare up and cause problems, mm-hmm. Then you definitely want to, make sure that the issue of insurance is settled, either your private insurance or like the secondary policy you buy, or if you're doing something adventurous, like my friend and I, we ended up not doing it. We were, one of my really good friends and I were talking about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro this year, mm-hmm. And we just kind of got busy and we didn't plan it, but I was absolutely 100% going to buy evac insurance and potentially even medical insurance for there if there was an injury. So those are the things I think you should ask yourself before you go on a trip. All the questions that we just talked about, do you trust the country? Does your private insurance cover it? But then what happens if say, all right, you didn't think about all this and you're in a foreign country and you get really sick or injured, mm-hmm. Then what? Because I think a lot of people probably wouldn't know necessarily what to do. So I guess the first question is, how serious is this? Is this a life-threatening illness or injury? At that point you don't have any choice. If it's something really serious, like you're in a bad accident,
they have to do something.
You have to be stabilized.
Yeah.
So you got to roll the dice, but there is a thing that can help you. In every country there is a U.S. embassy. And it's good to know, it's good to know for many reasons, but specifically for this related to health, it's good to know the U.S. Embassy number, because if you're a U.S. citizen in a foreign country and you or someone in your party gets sick or injured, you can call the U.S. Embassy and they will recommend proper places to get treatment.
Oh.
So instead of getting taken to this private hospital, which was probably a scam in Mexico, the U.S. Embassy say, no, you need to go here or there because this is where we send Americans who get sick.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. It's somebody watching out for you.
Yeah, that's really good to know.
They can also help you get in touch with family and friends back in the States, okay, to let them know that you're ill, which is important because if you get seriously ill, you may need, funds or whatever from the United States.
Right.
And they can actually also facilitate that, transfer funds if you need it. So knowing the U.S. Embassy where you're going is important. Now, if it's non-serious, then you have a decision to make, right? Is this something that you can ride out, or do you want to seek care in that country, or do you want to go back home?
Yeah.
And this is where it can be kind of hard for the layperson to make an educated decision because, they may not know enough about the medical issue they have. They may or may not know about the medical issue you have to know, is it safe, or do I need to go back home? And I actually have a story about this too. So we were in the Bahamas like 3 or 4 years ago, and we were staying in Atlantis, and my daughter, who was, I guess she was probably like 8 or 9 at the time, fell and hit her head, and she had this really big gash on her forehead that basically went down to the bone. And so I guess I wasn't there when it happened. Like, she was playing, and like my wife comes holding her, and there's blood everywhere, and she's like, they want to take her to like the hospital, and I was like, no. I was like, absolutely not, because she was obviously like not she wasn't actively dying. She just had a bad cut. And they're like, we're gonna call an ambulance and all that. I'm like, no, stop. I was like, do you have like a medical person here? They're like, yeah. I was like, I just want to go see that medical person here. And so all I did was ask them for some basically steri strips to just, I rinsed this thing out and just close. I was like, look, I'm a surgeon. We're absolutely 100% not going to the hospital here in Nassau for them to do surgery on her. So all I did is I just like temporized it, and then I put some strips across it because we were leaving the next day. And then the next morning I called the hospital and said, hey, I need to book a case for 5 o'clock this afternoon. And so I took her to surgery when I got home. Now, not everybody's gonna be able to do that, but I mean, you could temporize something potentially and then jump on a plane and come home.
Yeah.
Which, that may or may not be the right thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of things you have to think about. Like, once again, do you trust the medical care where you're at? Do you have insurance? I mean, in my opinion, if you don't have some form of insurance in the country you're in, and you have any type of, now UTI is a different story, right?
Yeah.
You can go to a clinic, get some antibiotics. But like, if you have a serious illness, like, you should get back home, because you could generate a bill that's, $10, $20, $30, $40,000 versus going back home. If you have insurance, and it's going to be a lot less.
That makes more sense.
So I just kind of summarize this, speaking on the topic of, what happens if you need medical care in a foreign country. I think it's important to pre-plan on this. I think it's a really, really good idea if you're going anywhere remote, or if you're going to a third world country where you don't trust, like, potentially the quality of the medical care. Get medical evacuation insurance. You can get this stuff pretty cheap. I saw it as cheap as like $50 or $100, where a company will actually fly you back to the United States if you need medical care. And the other thing is to make sure, if it is a place where you would be willing to get medical care, make sure that you have insurance for that. Some private insurances will cover you in foreign countries. You have to check with your specific provider and also tell them what country you're going to. But if that is not an option for you, you can actually buy policies for medical coverage in foreign countries for a very specific set of time, and that's also very reasonable. So, thinking about these things ahead of time is the best, because you don't want to get caught unaware and run into a medical emergency in a foreign country and not be ready for it. So,
yeah, that's good information.
It is. I have to think that's a really good topic.
Something you don't think about.
Yeah, and as I said, like, really, this was the very first time that I had thought about it was when we went to Alaska, and it's because my wife said, telling me some story about somebody she knew whose friend had to get evacuated off a boat in Alaska, and their bill was like insane. And then, I was like, oh, we can buy this insurance for like $80 a person for a week. And I was like, done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even remember how much it was, but I think it was less than $100 per person for our Alaska trip, in case, we got mauled by a bear or something.
He saw one though.
Oh, we did see one. So.
And an eagle.
I forgot to bring the video.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do it next week.